He is revered by many as one of the greatest leaders in Islamic history. And in virtually every school in the religion of Islam is revered as the exemplar when it comes to piety, worship, spirituality and humility. For Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein is seen as a colossus when it comes to spirituality. Today every school in the religion of Islam takes their spiritual knowledge from Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein. And what you find is that unfortunately his life has not been studied in the way it should be. Many schools within the religion of Islam have limited Ali ibn al-Hussein to studying or to talking about the emotional aspects of his character. In the idea that when we normally mention Ali ibn al-Hussein, we normally mention him in the context of Karbala and the tragedy of the 10th of Muharram. It is very rare for people to dissect Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein outside of what happened at Karbala. Normally when you hear about his life, you hear of this man who was crying after Karbala, who was sad after Karbala. But there isn't really much of an analysis of Ali ibn al-Hussein, the great spiritual reformer, or Ali ibn al-Hussein, the man who changed the direction of the religion of Islam when the religion was at its lowest he had with the ladies who replaced his mom. You would think that they were his mothers as well. In which way? For example, one of the most famous stories about Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein was that when he would sit on the dinner table with his stepmother, he would be sitting down and his stepmother would be sitting down, and he'd stay looking at the food and he'd then look at his stepmother. She'd look at him and she'd say to him, "What's wrong? Why are you looking at me?" He would say, "I'm scared to put out my hand towards some food which you had your eyes on." At home sometimes when we eat with our mothers, we don't even wait for them to come from the kitchen. Eat, finish. Before you know it, the iftar is done, you've gone to watch television, your mother hasn't even started eating. Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, even though his mother Shaharbanu, someone asks, why was her name changed? Because Imam al-Hussein said, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen said, Shah Zanan means Sayyidat al-Nisa. Sayyidat al-Nisa is only Bibi Fatima. So her name was Shaharbanu. She passed away. Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, even with his stepmother, he wanted to look. Is she looking at an area of food? I will not put my hand there until she takes. The moment she takes, then I will take after that. And that's why his father loved him so much. Imam al-Hussein loved Imam Zain al-Abedeen so much. He was not only his second eldest son, but on top of that, to Imam al-Hussein, he saw the light of revelation in the face of Imam. The second way he reformed society, he wrote his magnificent book of supplications, As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah. I tell you, there is no book of supplications like a Sahifa Sajjadiyah. Because the Imam would always say, dua is the weapon of the believer, and it is the light of the heavens of the earth. Imam, in another hadith, Imam Hassan, when they were asking him, what's the distance between heaven and earth? Imam would say, the distance between the skies and the earth is the cry of an oppressed person in dua. As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah is the greatest book of supplications written by a human being. Someone asks the question, why did he write a book on dua? Because dua is what opens up our relation with God. He felt that when the Arabs had killed his father, they had lost all relationship with God in their life. There was no more God in their life. Rather, they were thinking of a world of I, not a world of we. So he wrote a Sahifa Sajjadiyah, a dua for your mother, a dua for your father, a dua for someone who's ill, a dua for the companions of Rasulullah, a dua for jihad, a dua for absolutely every stage in your life. 51 du'as. And you know what the shame is? There are lovers of Zain al-Abedeen who have never read one dua in a Sahifa Sajjadiyah. Never forget the great companions of Zain al-Abedeen. The first of them, Abu Hamza al-Thamani. You've read dua Abu Hamza in Shahr Ramadan. And why should I not cry when you place me in the grave? And I see the darkness of the grave and the narrowness of the grave. And I see Munkar and Nakir coming towards me in the grave. asking me questions. That Abu Hamza al-Thamali, one of the greatest companions of Imam Zain al-Abedeen. Sa'id ibn al-Jubair, killed by Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi because of the greatness of his prayers, companion of Imam Zain al-Abedeen. Qambar died in the time of Imam Zain al-Abedeen. Kumail, Dua Kumail, was killed in the time of Imam Zain al-Abedeen. All of them were killed by Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Imam Zain al-Abedeen, every angle of his life was an example for us. And without a doubt, he would never forget what happened on the 10th of Muharram. Imagine how hard for 35 years after Karbala, you would always remember what happened to your father. If he saw a sheep being slaughtered, he would say to the butcher, "Oh butcher, when you slaughter a sheep, do you give it water?" He said, "Yes, O Zain al-Abedeen. Every creation of Allah deserves water before it dies." And he would look at him and say, "They killed my father without giving him any water." On another occasion, he saw a man on another occasion who used to dig the graves. He said to him, "Oh man, when I die, will you bury me?" The man said, "Of course, I will never leave you alone." He said, "My father was alone with no one to bury him." On the third occasion, he saw a man calling out, "I am ghareeb, I am a stranger, help me." Imam came to him and said to him, "Do you have food?" He said, "Yes, I do." He said to him, "Do you have clothes?" He said, "Yes, I do." He said to him, "Oh man, if you were to die, would your family bury you?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Then don't call yourself a ghareeb. A ghareeb is one who lay on the ground in Karbala with no one to bury him for 3 nights alone." But you know what was the saddest part? Imam al-Baqir, when he says, "When I was burying my father, when I was in my father's final moments, my father was lying on the bed. The poison of Walid had surrounded his body. It was 35 years after Karbala." He said, "I came to my father. The poison was surrounding his body. I came to him, and as a son should do to a father, I embraced my father along his chest. My father began to cry in a way I had never seen him cry. I said to him, 'My father Zain al-Abedeen, why did you cry? In a moment you will see Rasulullah. In a moment you will see Fatima al-Zahra. In a moment you will see Ali ibn Abi Talib. In a moment you will see Al-Hassan. In a moment you will see Al-Hussein. My father, why do you cry?' Listen to the reply. He said to him, 'Oh my son Al-Baqir, I cry because when I am dying, you are on my chest. Whereas when my father was dying, do you know who sat on the chest of my father when he lay on the ground?' Those lines remained with him until the day he passed away.